Over 75,000 years ago, a single catastrophic event nearly wiped out humanity. The exact date of the eruption of the Toba supervolcano in modern Indonesia is unknown, but researchers consider it the largest volcanic eruption of the planet in the last 28 million years. About 2,800 cubic kilometers of rock erupted from the Toba volcano and formed a crater lake that is visible even from space. As parts of Indonesia, India and the Indian Ocean were covered by 15 centimeters of volcanic debris, ash and volcanic gases rose into the atmosphere, partially blocking sunlight. The partial darkness caused a volcanic winter, and temperatures around the world dropped by approximately 5 degrees Celsius. While it is impossible to calculate exactly how many people succumbed to the 10-year volcanic winter, scientists are still trying to estimate the number. According to some researchers, the human population could have been reduced to 3,000 to 10,000 people, almost driving humanity to extinction. Think of this video as a spurious, sprawling map of the collision between two genres, two expressions of entertainment and art. The best, two science fiction and horror. Obviously, there is no concrete agreed-upon definition or origin of science fiction or horror. I think it's up to the individual to decide where they fit on the shelf. But whichever way you cut it, this corner of the canon is huge, from the existential fear of one's own mind, to a very real apocalypse or dystopia, to a bloodthirsty, murderous alien or robot from the future. I know it's a massive cliché, but I'm very comfortable with starting this journey with Frankenstein. It ticks all the boxes of applying fictional science to render a horrific outcome. The book has more to say about humanity, horror reflected in our monstrous actions. It's poetically gothic and romantic, rather than out-and-out scary in the same vein. Mary Shelley leads us to Edgar Allan Poe, a master of the mob, but bore in heavily from the advances in technology. In the real world, if there is an underlying theme to the history of science fiction, horror is that there is an accelerated scientific landscape to draw inspiration from. Mary Shelley had chemistry and philosophy. Poe used more physics and cosmology, which led to genetic manipulation, robots trying to kill us, nuclear obliteration, techno-dystopias, and artificial intelligence, enslaving us talking of history. What does it say about the state of science fiction horror? When the pinnacle of the movement was over 100 years ago, the perfect combination of creeping fear and ancient aliens is, of course, H.P. Lovecraft. He bridges that gap between Edgar Allan Poe and John Carpenter. It's all written with that dark Gothic brooding swagger, but it's not afraid to be about slimy tentacles and monsters. From the deep Lovecraft's appeal fell into near obscurity when science fiction and horror were doing a different thing around World War II and the Golden Age. But he got swept up with the new wave and gained momentum during the 70s and the 80s, and he is now the ugly poster boy for this corner of our world. Of course, literature continued to evolve. People were interested in reading about this stuff, and I do have a story to tell, but the face of science fiction horror changed forever with the advent of music. Music, cinema, Hollywood, Bollywood, the British film industry, cinema of Japan and beyond, has used the art of filmmaking to tell stories for over a century. Being able to actually show horrific things and images from an alien world would obviously transform science fiction and horror more so than other genres. Something like Frankenstein or The Invisible Man, while technically brilliant in their written form, were perfect for adaptation. Love stories and noir detective thrillers were the bread and butter of 30s and 40s cinema, but for sheer wow, Boris Karloff's monster with lightning strikes and dramatic music was pretty hard to beat. Sci-fi, horror, weird fiction in general fell out of favor around wartime. Escapism itself had to be put on pause until the world put itself back together. And then we had a real renaissance. The 1950s delivered the bulk. A lot of the horror came from panic. The aliens are coming. That's the thinly veiled idea of swapping. Nazis and Japanese soldiers with invaders from another world. I think this style of American cinema had the same issues as its music and fashion. When something was very popular, it seemed to dominate and restrict artistic diversity. For a few years, most rock and roll sounded just like Elvis. Everybody had the same haircut, watched the same TV shows, and all sci-fi movie posters looks like this. I'm half joking, of course, amongst all the schlock. There is some genuinely original work and great adaptations of earlier books and short stories. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Thing from Another World on the Beach, The Incredible Shrinking Man, and The Fly all push the envelope and evolve the genre. But for the most part, science fiction and horror, depending on your definition, were taken separate paths from the L50s to the late 70s. John Wyndham was writing his cozy catastrophes, The Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits delivered uncomfortable sci-fi. And in 1967, Harren Ellison gave us my favorite example of science fiction, horror, I Have No Mouth, and I Must Scream. You could argue that most of Philip Dick's novels blended these genres, post-apocalyptic and dystopian fiction, where horrific and non-traditional ghost stories could fall into the speculative. But honestly, you would be grasping at straws. Never fear, the 80s are here. The decade where many people's favorite science fiction film and their favorite horror film are often the same film. Actually, we have to start in 1979, almost the 80s. Ridley Scott's Alien is science fiction, horror's undisputed champion, according to the survey we hold every year. Anyway, well, I'm disputing it and saying John Carpenter's The Thing is the best.